Hey, what's up YouTube? Brandon here with another video, and today I have the new Sony A7R III with the 24-105. And in this video, I'm going to be discussing should you upgrade, especially if you're coming from the Sony A7R II. So definitely stay tuned. First off, I did want to mention that the R3 does inherit the same sensor as the R2, so it is a 42.2 megapixel sensor, and it's the exact same one that's in the R2. But what Sony's done is made a lot of quality of life improvements from everything that's built around the sensor. And we'll get a lot into those items in this video. So first up, the physical changes. You will notice that the camera does feel a little bit beefier in the hands. That's primarily because the grip is a little bit larger to hold the new MPF-Z 100 style battery. Now this is the same battery that it's inheriting from the A9. Now Sony markets this as being a little bit over double the battery life as that of the W series that comes with the R2 and the 6500 A6000. So basically all the other cameras have been using the W series in the A9, and now the new R3 has this Z series batteries. Another thing you notice is that the buttons and dials are a little bit larger and a little bit more tactile, so that makes it a little bit easier when navigating menus and kind of setting up your custom buttons. So that is a big improvement as well. So overall, just the clickiness and tactileness of the buttons seem to be a little bit more precise than that on the A7R II. Another thing to mention is that the body on the R3 is a little bit less angular, so getting access to those buttons a little bit easier as well. I am happy to see that Sony has included the AF joystick. Now what this does is it makes it easy to adjust the autofocus point while shooting. Now one of the biggest things I'm sure all of you know is that it does come with dual SD card slots here. So when you open this door, it does come with dual SD card slots. Unfortunately, only one of them is UHS 2, which is the new faster read and write speeds. But I think just having two is definitely a step in the right direction from Sony. Now, due to the dual SD card slot door bay, the video record button placement has moved from along the side to the back of the camera here. Now that's probably not the only reason it had to move. It's probably in response to a lot of feedback from customers who voiced that the side of the camera was not the best place for that video record button. Now onto the inputs and outputs for the camera. It does come with two USB ports, one being the micro USB, another being the new USB Type-C port. Specifically, this is the USB-C 3.1 Gen 1, and this is for faster data transfer while tethered to a computer. So I am happy to report that both ports does support charging the camera, so you can use the USB-C or the micro USB port for charging the battery in the camera. Now also with the R3, you will be getting an improved EVF. Now Sony says that the EVF has a higher resolution and improved viewing angle as that compared to the one that's in the R2. Now if you prefer to use a screen, you'll be happy to know that the R3 does come with touch autofocus using the screen. Unfortunately, you can't use it to navigate through the menus, but definitely, I'd say it's definitely a step in the right direction. Next up, autofocus. Now with the A7R III, there's been massive improvements regarding the autofocus system. I will flat out say that it's not quite as good as the A9, but there's been a lot of improvements as compared to the R2. Now the R3 and the R2 do share the same number of autofocus phase detection points at 399. The R3 does have 425 contrast detection points. That's up from 25 from the R2 with 67% coverage as compared to the 45 that's in the R2. Now with the R3, you do gain a stop of light sensitivity as far as the focus system, so it now focuses down to -3 EV. Now with the new autofocus system, Sony says that it improves the eye tracking capability in the A7R III. It's not as good as the A9, but they do say it's double the performance that's in the A7 II. Now another cool note is with the R3, you'll be able to trigger the eye autofocus with the shutter release. So that's definitely a feature that I was wondering why you couldn't do on the R2, but it's happy to note that through software improvements that they're able to provide that on the R3. So next up, photo improvements. You'll also get higher native ISO, it's 32,000, that's up from 25,600 on the A7R II. You'll also see improvements in in-body image stabilization is 5.5 stops on the R3 as compared to 4.5 stops on the R2. Now with the R3, you'll also see improvements in the burst frame rate. That's 10 frames per second in both mechanical and silent, as compared to 5 frames for the mechanical and 1 for the silent. You'll also get a larger buffer on the R3. Here it's a 76 compressed RAW versus the 23 on the R2. So now the video improvements. So one of the big improvements is that when you're shooting in the APS-C mode, you do get 5K oversampling. So what Sony's doing here is that they're taking a 5K image on the sensor and downsampling that to a 4K image and writing that to the card. So with that, you're gonna get better, more sharper detail and improved image quality on your finalized output to the card. Here you're gonna get S-Log3 for video that boasts a whopping 14 stops of dynamic range for video. Sony's also included the S-Gamut3 color space. So if you use other cameras like the 6500, the FS5, you'll be able to easily match that footage with the new addition of the S-Gamut3 Cine color profile. Now with the R3, you do get the addition of the new hybrid log gamma profile. So what this allows you to do is capture high dynamic range footage without the need of having to do any color grading later. Lastly, Sony's thrown in the slow and quick motion capability, which allows you to capture frame rates from 1 frame per second up to 120 frames per second. So next up, new features. Now the Sony A7R3 does carry over the same menu system as the A9 and the 6500. The R3 does come with a new shooting mode called Pixel Shift Multi-Shooting. Now there's a lot of videos about that. It's a complex system, but pretty basically it takes 4 shots and stacks them together and combines them into a single shot that has high resolution and fidelity and color treatment. There's plenty of other videos you can talk about Pixel Shift Multi-Shooting, so I won't get too much in detail here, but it is a new feature that's unique to the A7R3. Another cool feature is anti-flicker. What anti-flicker tries to do is detect the flickering that happens in artificial light, and it does its best to reduce the impact that would have on your photos. Lastly is Bluetooth for tethered transfer of GPS data from your phone. So what this allows you to do is pair your camera with your cellular device, and while you're out shooting, it'll transfer that GPS data onto your videos and your photos so you can find and track them later. So what's been removed from the R2 to the R3? Most notably and controversially, it's been the Play Memories apps. So if you use apps that helps with time-lapse, lens distortions, cool neutral density effects, you won't have any of that here. So this has been the second camera to come out from Sony that doesn't have the Play Memories support. Now secondly, what you won't find here is the Panorama Mode. Sony's removed that. Now I personally never really used that. I prefer to take my shots and stitch them together in post-processing using Photoshop's Photo Merge. But if you were using the Panorama Mode, it's no longer available on the R3. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I've shot with the A7R2 for a couple years now and I absolutely love this camera. I have no regrets buying it. I would highly recommend it to anyone. But is the A7R3 right for you? I think that's primarily a question of budget. Unfortunately, if you don't have the budget, I think that the A7R2 is perfectly priced right now. You can get it for a steal with the introduction of the R3. But if you can't afford this camera, I think that Sony's listened to a lot of gripes from professionals and added a lot of things such as the dual SD card slot, the improved battery, the faster processing, the new menu system. So there's a lot of things in the R3 that if you're coming from the R2 that you're gonna really like in the day-to-day use. So I would highly give my recommendation to either of these cameras. If you're on a budget, definitely the A7R2 is a great, spectacular camera. But if you have the funds, definitely I would recommend upgrading or at least picking up the A7R3. All right guys, so that's been my rundown of the A7R3. If you found anything in this video useful, definitely give us a thumbs up, share, comment, subscribe. It really helps me. If you're new to the channel, think about subscribing. In the future, I'll be doing a lot more videos about the A7R3, lenses, modifiers, lighting, kind of going out shooting, all that kind of stuff. So definitely subscribe, hit the bell, get notifications from me. And until next time, you guys have a good day.